welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well, and welcome to my final video of this year, 2021. Yes, somehow it is December, it's the end of the year. I'm not exactly sure where this year has gone because I'm kind of still processing like 6 months ago, I think, at this stage. But yeah, it has at this point been a year since my last eyeshadow palette collection. So I thought I would film an update for you guys, show you where we are at now. I have counted 63 palettes and I definitely thought I would be on more than that, which goes to show that I did do well with decluttering earlier this year. But anyway, I have all of my palettes laid out in front of me. They are all organized by brand right now. So I think the best thing to do is just gonna be to jump in. So let's get started. All right, so let's start off with my Makeup Revolution palettes for no other reason than the fact that they are literally just like right here in front of me. They're the closest. They were definitely the brand that I feel like at one point I had the most palettes by, but I did get rid of a few. I'm gonna start off with a couple of palettes from the Friends collaboration. I can't remember if this was the second or the third round at this point, but I went with the Joey palette, which is this one, which is really, really nice and colorful. I had a good experience with this one. I gave it a positive review. I thought it was really, really fun. And then the other one that I have that I just didn't enjoy so much is the Chandler palette. It just didn't really do it for me. I don't think that I've actually picked this one up since I reviewed it, whereas I have definitely had a couple of extra plays with the Joey palette. So this one for me was a big miss. I wouldn't recommend it. Okay, the next one was another fail, and I have not picked this one up, I don't think, since I reviewed this. This is the Revolution Ultraviolet palette. Now, looking at it in the first place, I do think that this one looks really, really fun, but it really wasn't one of Revolution's best palettes, unfortunately. The metallics to me, just super boring, not very reflective. Like, you've called this palette ultraviolet, it should be so bright, it should be so fun. Just felt like this one was gonna be so good and just so disappointing. Up next we have my Forever Flawless palettes. I still have 4 of these. I think I've only decluttered 1. The one that probably still to this day remains my favorite has got to be the Forever Flawless Ice palette, which was a dupe for the Jeffree Star Blue Blood palette. Now, I will say this isn't the best quality eyeshadow out there. There's definitely better. I love this shade of blue down here, Iceberg, but I feel like it just ends up going patchy throughout the day, so it's definitely not perfect, but the color scheme is fun. Most of the metallics in here, I mean, listen, like, that's just so much better. And this silver, look at this silver. This is one to me where Revolution did really well. If you do want a blue palette, this one is really fun. I still have the Revolution Forever Flawless Birds of Paradise palette. I didn't give this one a great review. I didn't have the best time. I did feel like I kept having issues with shades going patchy, which is just a bit unfortunate. I don't think this one's gonna be in my collection for much longer because I just don't reach for it, and it doesn't really do it for me. Then next we have the Forever Flawless Allure palette, which I did get a lot of use out of. After posting my review, I started using this one pretty solidly. At the time, it was just a really nice nude warm palette, and these metallics, I do think they're some of the more interesting ones that Revolution have done. They're just, look at that. Look at these ones and compare them to the ones from the Ultraviolet palette. There's just no comparison. I don't really reach for this one as much because I feel like color story wise, it doesn't quite do what I need it to anymore. But I would say if you have green eyes and if you're more of a beginner and you want something nice and easy to use, this is it. Like, there's no issues blending. And the last Forever Flawless one that I have is the Enchanted palette, which is from last year's Halloween collection. It was limited edition, but I do believe that they brought it back this year. I don't know if it's still available. If it is still available, I will link it down below along with all the videos of me using it. I'm going to do that for all of the palettes. But what I did really like about this one, it's just something different. It's a rainbow palette, but it's way more grungy, and it just really stood out from what Revolution was doing at the time last year. And final palette from Revolution, ooh, we have the color book, and I had forgotten that this was broken, unfortunately. I feel like when I I bought this one, it was a really good addition to my collection because I didn't necessarily have a lot of greens at the time. These were £15 when they came out, so they weren't the most expensive, but they also weren't the cheapest, but they were quite good to inject like one color into your collection if you had something missing, like for me the green at the time. I don't tend to reach for this one all that much, but I just keep it around because it just has a lot of shades of blue and green. So I do feel like if I ever get stuck with some of those shades, I can go into this one. It will come in handy. So moving on to our next brand, I'm going to stay in the Revolution family and I'm going to talk about Makeup Obsession, and I only have two palettes left from them, which are the Keep It Fresh palette and the Sunshine Makes Me Happy. I have not reached for these palettes all that much. I have a video on each of them. These palettes are £5 each, which I was very happy to pay when they came out because I thought they were all going to be dupes for the Colourpop monochromatic palette, and then this was the pan size that we got and I was fuming. Now the pigmentation on these definitely isn't bad. I do have to say, when I have played with these, I was quite impressed. The thing that just puts me off is the size. I just can't see past it. They are just so tiny and I don't really think they're worth the money for that reason. But if the size of them doesn't bother you, the pigmentation was actually quite good. I was actually quite impressed. Next up, I have got two palettes from e.l.f. in their Bite Size collection. I have, what is this called? Chocolate Mint, which is this one, and then this one is Mint to Be. Both of these are really, really cute, and I was really pleased with the pigmentation actually on these ones because the price, I think they're £3, but these ones were £4, so they were a little bit more expensive, I think. But the quality of these for the price is just surprisingly good. I need to try more from e.l.f. e.l.f. is a brand that I feel like I haven't tried enough, and I just need more and more from them. Not that I need any more makeup, but you know, that's a whole other topic. Up next, we're gonna go right to the other side of the price spectrum, and I'm gonna talk about Huda Beauty. And I have three eyeshadow palettes to go through from them. The first one is one that is not available anymore. It's not been available for a while, and it's a bit of a state. We have lost two eyeshadows, one of them unfortunately being my favorite metallic in there. Haven't said what this is, in case you hadn't guessed already. This is the Smoky Obsessions palette from the original Obsessions palette run. It's really lovely. It's been well loved. It is currently sat in my box of products that I want to finish up because, you know, it would be nice to actually finish an eyeshadow palette for once. The other one is the Nude Light Obsessions, which is definitely doing a lot better. I maybe wish I'd gone for the medium or the Rich Obsessions instead, just because I do tend to find that this one is just too light a lot of the time. I would want something, at least one shade, just to add a little bit more depth. There's no issues with the palette other than that. The metallics are gorgeous. The mattes blend in really well. It's just, yeah, I would have just wanted a little bit more depth. And then the last palette, you guys know, I've mentioned this one on my channel several times. I have hit pan on several shades. This is, of course, the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette. I adore this palette. I will say the mattes, I've said this before, they're not my favorite thing. I don't think the mattes are where this palette kind of shines for me. It is just all about those metallics for me. We have Supermoon. Galaxy is definitely a favorite. Nebula, I do adore. I think they're gorgeous, and I think Huda does do a really fantastic job with her metallics, with her shimmers. There was a really, really good offer on Boots for Black Friday. It was down to like £38 or something, and I was really, really tempted to buy another one, and I think next time there is a ridiculous offer on there, I will, because I can't imagine not having this in my collection. This one, absolutely a favorite. We're gonna stick to the high-end brands, and the next one we're gonna talk about is Urban Decay, and I do only have two palettes from them, and both of them are discontinued. Let's start off with the Beached palette, which I really, really, really wanted. I tried to use it this year, I really did. There's actually only one true matte shade in this one, which is Daybreak. Everything else is a metallic. Some of the colors are just a bit too warm for me. I think I would rather it be maybe a little bit more gold than like this really, really red tone that we have here. So yeah, this was one that I really wanted, and unfortunately it just doesn't really do it for me, which is a shame. The other palette that I have from them is again one that I wanted for so long. This one is the Urban Decay Moondust palette. I think this one was a favorite for a lot of people. Unfortunately, it just doesn't get a lot of use from me at the moment. Okay, these are actually really pretty. I was gonna say, oh, maybe it's just that these aren't as good compared to some more modern formulas that we have, but actually that is stunning and I need to get more use out of them. It's just a really pretty selection of shades. Oh, I really need to use this one more. I will use this one more, I promise myself. All right, let's do my last expensive brand, which is Anastasia Beverly Hills. I am almost a little bit surprised that all of these are still in my collection, you know? I would have thought at the start of the year that maybe I would have decluttered them. I went back into the Subculture palette and I was kind of shocked at how much I enjoyed this. It's definitely still got its issues. I can tell when I'm using it why people had so much trouble with it. However, the way that I use makeup has evolved quite a lot in the last few years and I'm using very different techniques. And I just found that overall I was having a much better time with it. It's still a little bit difficult to use, like I do have to be really careful, but I just did a couple of looks with it and I was like, oh, wow, okay, actually I need to keep this one. We've got to talk about Modern Renaissance as well. This is the palette that reignited my love for makeup. This is where it all started. This is when I got back into watching YouTube. I started blogging. If they gave us an anniversary palette and it was a Modern Renaissance 2, I would be so here for that. I would be really excited. Just the updated version, not identical, but just the modern version. That's, yeah, the modern Renaissance, yeah, whatever. Anyway, let's move on. Moving on to the next one, which is the Norvina palette, and this one was probably the biggest disappointment that I had from the brand. I feel like I always do the same types of look with this palette, and I feel like when I use the metallics, like they're super pigmented and they are reflective, but I've just used rose gold and this one over here. They look the same on my finger, don't they? They don't look that different, and I feel like that's my issue with this palette. I always end up doing the same. And finally, the last one is the Prism palette, and this one was a limited edition one. This was a Christmas palette. At the time, this was so exciting. Having a pop of neon yellow green in there, that was like not done. And it was such an interesting color scheme. Like we do have some really interesting shades, like these really deep metallic shades. I can see how that is a Christmas palette, but you know, if I swatch that sphere shade, I mean, it swatches actually quite well on the finger. I've never gotten it to look this good on the eye. I feel like maybe it's the way it's organized. I never really know what I want to do with it, but it was fun. It was fun when it came out. It looked different. I feel like Anastasia just used to do things that stood out so much that was so different, and I'm not sure that's what we're getting anymore. And they've just fallen off the radar for me. I think I should just use those palettes more, get some use out of them. That's what I need to do. Right, let's move on from the expensive brands back to affordable ones. I have a few I Heart Revolution palettes here, starting off with the Cinnamon palette. This one is a really good palette for autumn. It's all matte, and actually the shades have got a really nice pigmentation in there. You've got so many warm shades, but you have a few cool tones like sumac. We've got some pinks. Like there's just a lot going on, and whenever I do play with it, I'm always like actually quite pleasantly surprised. If you want just like the perfect warm autumnal palette, you don't want to spend a lot of money on it, actually this really isn't bad. I then have a couple of additions from this year when it comes to I Heart Revolution. The first one being this I Heart Revolution Unicorn Heart palette. I haven't really reached for this one all that much since I reviewed it, and the reason for that is that this is an all metallic palette. It's literally the opposite from the Cinnamon palette that we just looked at. They're not amazing, like they're just fine, but the nice thing is that these two palettes do complete each other. This was not a highlight for me for My Heart Revolution. This would be a skip unless you really want metallics in these shades, you know you're going to use them. And the other one was the Good Luck Charms palette, which is this one. I would say the issue with this one, the reason I haven't reached for it all that much, is probably just the fact it hasn't got a lot of mattes, so it just doesn't inspire me all that much. I do think the color scheme is cute. The shade Destiny, I mean, Revolution really do know how to make a silver, I have to say that. They can do really nice metallics when they actually do it. They just don't do it often enough, and I don't know why. Let's do Colourpop next. I haven't actually added to my Colourpop collection this year at all. I really wanted to place an order for Black Friday actually, and then one of the items that I wanted sold out, and it's not been back in stock since, which is really annoying. But I have 5 palettes here, 3 of them being in the monochromatic collection, and the first one is the Star Wars Mandalorian palette. I mean, it's so cute. I had to have it as a long-time Star Wars fan. Unfortunately, I just haven't reached for this one recently. I had kind of forgotten that I had it in my collection until they did a Mandalorian collection part 2, and I was like, oh Oh yeah, I own this palette. Whoops, but I do really like the color story. I was going through a whole phase with khaki last year, so this is really lovely. Pigmentation, gorgeous. Colourpop shadows, I don't really have anything bad to say about. They can be quite powdery, but I've had no issues with them. I think this is really super cute. I don't know if it's being sold at the moment, but if you do love khaki and you love Star Wars, it is a really nice one. Next up we have Blowing Smoke, which again, I really want to use some more. I really like the tones in this palette. They're really cool toned, and I think it's just gorgeous. It is. And again, these metallic silvers, look at that. This is really pretty, really pretty. The last one that I have is the Wine and Only, which I really wanted. I absolutely fell in love with it. I just really wanted a burgundy palette. Have I reached for it all that much? No. I do have to say I'm not sure burgundies really suit me. She says literally wearing a burgundy eyeliner and a burgundy lipstick. I feel like there is a time and place for me to wear them. I feel like I can look really washed out, which yeah, I kind of probably do look really washed out, but I feel like I have to be in the right mood for this. And I do kind of feel like with this one, I always kind of end up doing the same kind of look. It's a bit like the Norvina palette. So this one, I would say not my favorite from Colourpop, unfortunately, which is a shame because I did really want it. Actually, I've just said that, but I realized that the next palette is definitely a case of really wanting something and then just not using it at all. This is the Colourpop and Sailor Moon palette. I was so excited for this collection. I had really high hopes for it. I wasn't really here for the color scheme. It wasn't really what I expected. I was just expecting like a bright green, a bright blue, like I was expecting to see all the Sailor Scouts represented, and that's just not what we have here, unfortunately. Quality wise, unfortunately, I really struggled with this one. Like, it just doesn't really work for me. It really just wasn't what I expected. The final palette that I have from Colourpop is in the same format as the Sailor Moon one, and this is the Boudoir Noir palette. Maybe the mistake that I made was purchasing this one after getting the Mandalorian palette, because then I had two khaki eyeshadow palettes and I ended up using this one more than the other because it's just got a little bit more going on. I think what I really like about this one is just the fact that it is different, and it's even different from everything else that Colourpop tends to do. I think a lot of the time when Colourpop release palettes, you just hear people say like, oh, this looks like this previous release, it looks like this one. Like, a lot of the time they just kind of do the same thing over and over again, and that's what I like about this one. It isn't, it's different, it stands out. I think this is my favorite one from them. I do really like it. Morphe, the same two Morphe palettes that I had last year. I haven't bought a new one from them in ages. I can't say they've really done anything that's really caught my eye, but of course, starting off the 35B, the one and only, which they did end up randomly re-releasing with Lisa Frank. That was a little bit odd. I didn't really get that. I don't use it anymore now because the quality just isn't that good. It's just not. It just doesn't hold up to what exists now. But I can't let go. I'm sentimental. We've been through so much. Me and this palette, she is the OG. She just is, and for that reason I can't get rid of her. The other Morphe palette that I have, of course, is the 39S. I think the problem when it comes to using this one is just the sheer size of it. Because it's so big, I do store it at the bottom of my drawer, and as a result you kind of end up forgetting that it's there, but it is gorgeous. I think this is when they had like a formula change. You can really tell the difference in between this one and the 35B. We have a really good balance of warmer pinkier shades to cool toned purples. This one again kind of sentimental because it really was the first purple palette in my collection. Up next we have a brand that I do talk about a lot on my channel. I really do talk about them a lot, and they do get a lot of my money. I order from them all the time. It's Beauty Bay. Of course it's Beauty Bay. I don't shut up about them. I have been shopping on Beauty Bay for the longest time. I dread to think how much of my money has gone to them. And when it comes to their own brand, their eyeshadow palettes are incredible. Let's start off with the original, the Me, Myself and Mitchell palette. I have had so much use out of this. It definitely was my go-to rainbow palette after the Morphe 35B. The metallics in this one have never been my favorite, but the mattes are incredible. The pigmentation, just everything about it, I love it. I do feel like I need to try Mitchell's own brand. I haven't actually done it yet, but yeah, this this is, again, one of the palettes that we can blame for the addiction. This one is fantastic. Now, to replace it, I got the Bright Mattes palette, which is this one. So as the name indicates, we only have matte eyeshadows in this one. The quality, again, is really, really good. And this goes on sale all the time. And you can get it for next to nothing. I think for Black Friday, they had it like at less than £10 for 42 eyeshadows. And there is just everything that you need in this palette. It's very, very complete. If you are more of a beginner, if you are looking to grow your collection, you're looking for one palette that kind of does everything in one go, this is just such a good option at such a stupidly good price. Next, we have the 20 pan eyeshadow palettes, and I have 3 of them. We're gonna start off with my favorite, which you know which one my favorite is because I always talk about it, and unfortunately it's discontinued. It is the Book of Magic. This is just the perfect color scheme. It has purple, it has blue, it has turquoise, it has a black that is fantastic. I like the formula of the metallics in this one because they don't necessarily feel like putties, whereas I feel like the later palettes, they are always that more putty formula, which sometimes I struggle with. No, these are all absolutely stunning, and they go on the eye as gorgeous as you'd expect them to be. I love the theme. I love the fact that it's called Book of Magic because I really do get those witchy vibes. Very sad that a lot of people did miss out on it, unfortunately. The next one they did is the New Romantic palette, which is this one here. This one isn't my favorite from them, but I did really enjoy it. I do feel like the quality is still there. It clearly is more neutral to warm, and it does really give me original Huda Beauty rose gold vibes. I think the mattes, just the quality that we've expected from them at this point. The metallics I was also happy with. Again, not too much of the putty formula. This one is, but I think the others are all right. It's just not a color scheme that I reach for all that much. When I want to go for a more creative makeup look, I'm gonna go for the Book of Magic every time. And then the most recent one that I got from them is the Age of Opulence palette. This one, when it came out, a lot of people were like, oh, okay, this looks a lot like Book of Magic. But I do feel like while there's a similarity in the color story, they are actually very, very different. Don't see the point in having all of these neutral shades when we already had them in Book of Magic. I would have liked it to focus more on color. The issue that I did have with it is that the metallics in this one are more the putty formula. So this palette just felt like a bit more work than Book of Magic. And then lastly, from Beauty Bay, I do have the 2 little 8 pan palettes. We have first of all the Utopia palette, which I haven't used since my review. There was nothing wrong with it. I don't think that there's like a problem with this palette. The quality was exactly what I expected it to be. I just have these colors in other palettes that I tend to reach for a lot more. The one out of the 2 that I do reach for all the time though is of course the Pastels palette. This is just such a good companion palette to all of the Beauty Bay palettes. If you just feel like you need some lighter blending shades, not packing on shades, I feel like it struggles with that, but if you just want some blending shades, I do recommend going out to get it because I just feel like it completes so many looks. And again, this is £10, but it does go on sale all the time. Couldn't live without this one, and I have made some serious dents in some of these shadows already. We have one last brand to get to before we move on to the individual palettes, and this is the one that I own the most palettes from, and that is W7. We first have the Queen Bee palette, which is a dupe for the Honey palette, was it, from Urban Decay? I really, really like this one. I really like the color scheme. Looking at it now, I do see similarities with the Colourpop Boudoir Noir, so that probably explains why I do enjoy those two so much. I have said in my latest review that the neutral palettes aren't necessarily where I think that W7 really shine. I don't think that is their best work, but I do think that this one is an exception to that rule. I was really, really pleased with the quality. If you want a dupe for the Urban Decay palette, I think it is a really nice one. Next, we have the Whatever palette, which is a dupe for the Anastasia Riviera palette, which was a palette that I did really, really want. I was very, very glad to have this. I did really enjoy using it, but I just don't reach for it all that much because I just don't feel like I'm very, very inspired by the color scheme, if I'm honest. I just have other ones in my collection that inspire me more. And saying that, the next one is one that inspires me more, which I haven't used as much as I would have liked. It is the Mardi Gras palette. It is a dupe for the Carnival 3 palette from Be Perfect and Stacey Marie. One of my favorites from W7, hands down. I do think that what they do best is really, really bright colors, and I was really, really impressed with the quality of this one. I thought it was incredible to work with, super easy to work with, and I really wasn't sure that it would be considering the price for such a big palette. I think it's about £15, so I was worried that the quality would suffer, but absolutely not. The shimmers I will say they're not that great, but there's not a lot of them in this palette, so it doesn't really bother me. Yeah, this one is gorgeous. I really, really need to play with it some more. I need to do some bright looks. I haven't done a bright look in forever. And yeah, definitely one of my favorites from W7. I have the Nudification, which is a dupe for the Too Faced Born This Way palette. I did enjoy this one when I reviewed it, but again, this is one where I kind of feel like I always end up doing the same looks. And it gives me Huda vibes as well, in the sense that this is just a lot more pinky than I would like it to be. If I'm reaching for a more nude palette, I don't necessarily want something more pinky, if that makes sense. So this one, not one of my favorites. Then I have the Show Off palette, which is a dupe for the Amoresi palette, which is really, really cute. Again, I think with this one, it is just the mattes. We have 2 mattes less, I believe, than we had in the original palette, and I just don't feel super inspired, which is annoying because I really wanted the Amoresi palette, and this is really, really gorgeous. I really do just need to play more with my eyeshadow. I'm just not getting as much of a chance as I used to, and I feel like I'm missing out. I feel like I'm missing out on my own makeup collection, basically. Yeah. We also have the Tokyo palette, which was really, really cute. I did think this one was quite nice. Our mattes are just all neutral at the top. They were pretty easy to use, and then we just have a rainbow of metallics down here. I believe this one was completely original as well. I don't think there's anything that it dupes, and it is just a really, really fun one. The metallics are a little bit hit and miss. I think it was sort of these ones on the end that I wasn't super impressed with. But again, the good thing about this one is you can add color for a very low price to your collection. I think this is great for like more of a teenager. You're not going to break the bank. And then going back to more kind of wearable shades, we have the Racy palette, which is a dupe for the Huda Naughty palette. And this one did really impress me because I did feel like the metallics in this one were really, really gorgeous. This one in particular, which is Risque. I mean, that is really, really nice, and I have had more of a play with this one. I've worn it a couple of times. I do like it. The marble shades, I just like, can we just not with the marble shades? I just really don't care about them. I could do without them. I would have liked them to replace it with more metallics that are just that creamy and gorgeous. The other thing though as well is the raw shade down here, which was that weird shade that she had in the palette. It dried out so quickly. I mean, I've had this palette for a few months now, to be fair, but that did dry out really quickly. But yeah, this one was definitely one of the dupes that I was most impressed by. And then still from W7, I have my stack of mini palettes, which are all dupes for Huda. And let's start off with the Vivid palettes. I have really, really enjoyed these. Again, I do think that these are some of the best dupes from W7. And if you want to add some bright colors to your collection, but you don't want to spend a lot of money, and maybe you're not quite ready to commit to the big Mardi Gras palette, the Vivid palettes are a great way of doing that. My favorite of the three has to be the Outrageous Orange palette. Absolutely stunning. I think all the shades complement each other very well. I think there's a lot that you can do with this palette. You can get a lot of looks out of them. Then we have the Punchy Pink palette, which I haven't used as much because it is literally just all pinks, so it's not necessarily as exciting, but the pigmentation in this one again is fantastic. And then finally we have the green palette, which just isn't my favorite, mostly because I mean, it's not that green, is it, when you look at it? Like, it's just got the row of greens at the top, and then it's got these shades in there that I just wasn't a fan of. Yeah, just not my favorite out of the three. If I had to go for one, the orange palette all the way, absolutely one of my favorites from them. Then next we have the Soft Hues palettes, which are from last year, and they are duping the Pastels palette, I think they're just called. Very, very cute. Not my favorite though, because this is where we start getting the marble shades, and I'm just not that fussed for them, but I do really like the color schemes. This is aquamarine. I like how we have the orange that really does complement the turquoise. Then we have the Rose Quartz palette, which again is really lovely. I like how the yellow complements the pink. This one is maybe like almost a little bit too pastel for me. Like, it's maybe just a little bit too light. I know obviously that pastel shades are really, really light. I get it, but I feel like I would want them to stand out a little bit more. I don't know if I'm explaining myself well. And then the Issue, the marble shade again. I mean, I've not used this palette that often, and there is a massive dent in it because they are so creamy. You just go through them really quick, which I'm just not a fan of. And then the Amethyst palette. I don't know what it was about this one, but when I was filming my review, I really wasn't inspired to create a look with it. I don't know why. I really, really struggled. And it just ended up being my least favorite of the three, which is weird because I do love purple. I don't know, like it just didn't really do it for me as much. And again, you can see I've used this palette Twice, actually I used this palette twice because I had to refilm my original look, and look at that dent that I've made because it was so hard to use. Like, that's really annoying. And then lastly, we have my most recent addition from them, which are the Sweet palettes, which dupe the Huda Brown palettes, I think it is. Starting off with the Sweet Honey palettes. I first saw this one and felt like it was quite similar actually to the Urban Decay Naked Honey palette. So the W7 Queen Bee palette, that's what I was meant to say. But actually they aren't that similar. Like, this is definitely more yellow. The metallics, I feel like we've come a long way. These ones had really nice pigmentation and they weren't overly chunky, even though they were more creamy. And then my favorite out of the collection probably was the Brown Sugar palette. I feel like the metallic shades in this one are quite different from one another. Like, I don't feel like there's as much overlap. I'm throwing the palettes around. I don't feel like there's as much overlap as there is in the metallics in this one, because these are all quite gold, but these do stand out from each other, which I really, really like. Only issue was this brown over here, which is like metallic, but not really. It's not a matte, and it was just not very nice to work with. And then the Sweet Cocoa palette, which just kind of gives me the same vibes as the Nudification palette. I don't feel like you need both. I feel like this one is easier to use because you can actually get your finger in the pans to use the metallics, whereas in this one they are really, really small. But yeah, just not my favorite. The mattes just went quite patchy. Yeah, it just didn't really excite me all that much. So I don't know how long I'm going to keep this one in my collection for. I also don't know if I want to separate the trios, but I do feel like in each trio there's just one that didn't work as well as the others. All right, we're nearly there. We've made it through all the brands where I own several palettes, so we're just left with kind of the remaining random assortment. First off, we have this one from Pat McGrath, which is the Eye Ecstasy Submersive. It's very disappointing that this one isn't made anymore because it's just a little selection of metallic shades that weren't stupidly expensive to buy like her normal eyeshadow palettes, and this was a present from a friend. I mean, look at the pigmentation and how reflective these are. These are absolutely stunning. This one as well, like, these are gorgeous and just really nice to throw in to another look when I need a specific metallic shade. That will just never be leaving my collection. Then we have the Viseart Neutral Mattes palette, which is one of my more expensive palettes. This was one of the first items that I received in PR, and there is a reason that Viseart has such a cult status and why it is as expensive as it is. The quality of these mattes, incredible, stunning. They are some of the best eyeshadows that I own. The pigmentation is gorgeous. They blend in so well. I mean, would I go out and pay the sort of £60 that this palette costs? That is a lot of money to be spending on neutral shades. I have got to say that. It's just not in my budget to do that. But these are fantastic. And if it is in your budget and you really, really want to try these, they are stunning. I then have this mini palette from MUA. This is the Bright Lustre palette. The quality isn't amazing, like, it isn't, but again, it's one of those palettes that I can just reach for when I want a specific shade. I mean, that turquoise is actually really, really, really nice. You know what, they're not bad. Again, this one is just a nice way of injecting a little bit of color in your collection without breaking the bank. We're gonna go from colorful to very, very muted. This is a Christmas eyeshadow palette from Yves Rocher. This one was a present from a family member, so this one isn't going anywhere. It is very, very sentimental to me. Pigmentation, not that amazing, but Yves Rocher are one of those more natural brands, and natural brands aren't generally my vibe anyway, but it's cute, and as I said, I'm holding on to this one because it has sentimental value for me. This is another silly expensive one, but I do really, really like it. This is from Mica Beauty, and this is the On Point palette. Again, this was sent to me in PR. Would I spend that much money on an eyeshadow palette? Probably not, because it's not in my budget, but these, I basically only ever end up putting my finger in the turquoise shades, don't I? I have to say, actually, the shades in this one do remind me a lot of the Urban Decay Moondust, but just like on steroids. Like, look at that. That is absolutely gorgeous. Definitely not in everybody's price point, but I do like reaching for this one every now and then when I want to use something really colourful and really sparkly. It is pretty. It's a little bit of a guilty pleasure. It is. It's very, very pretty. Up next, I have the Tribe from Juvia's Place. I did have two palettes from them last year, but I did declutter one, and I was definitely thinking that I would use this one if I kept it in my collection, but I've got to say I haven't reached for it, unfortunately, which is annoying because look at how bold and beautiful those shades are. I think it is the metallics that I don't like as much, unfortunately. I think maybe I would enjoy this palette a lot more if it was fully matte, because look at that top row. Absolutely gorgeous. I really do need to give this one another chance, but it also wouldn't surprise me if this one didn't hang around in my collection for much longer, I have to say. We have the Mad Beauty and Disney's Mulan eyeshadow palette. This is very, very pretty. I was very pleased with this one, considering Mad Beauty is a brand that I had never heard about. They do a lot of licensed gimmicky stuff, if that makes sense. Like, they do a lot of sheet masks that are like the Disney princesses and all that. This really did impress me, and I heard someone mention another eyeshadow palette from them recently that they said good things about. So if they ever do collaborate with a property that you are a big fan on, I wouldn't sleep on it. I was actually quite pleased with it. All right, this next one is one that I feel a little bit guilty about. I feel a little bit bad. It is one that I was really excited about. It is a brand that is doing really well right now, and that I'm really excited for, but I never actually ended up putting any content up on my channel using this palette, and that is the Lois Cosmetics Meet Me in the Underworld palette. It is really pretty, and like I said, I was so excited about this, and I don't know what it is about this palette, but I really struggle to use them. I must have sat down to film with this palette like 3, 4, 5 times, and every time I'd start doing a look and it just wouldn't work. It was really weird. Unfortunately, I just don't know what it is. I just can't do a look with this, and I don't know why, because there are so many talented humans out there who have done so many looks with this. I just haven't been able to really get this to work for me properly, and it really makes me sad. It really does. And then for my last palette, we have the Pixie and Tina Young eyeshadow palette. Pixie eyeshadows, what I've tried so far, I'm not that impressed. I don't think this is that good. I can't remember how much this cost, but I feel like it was a lot of money for what it is. Like, they're just not great. I have used this one again since my video. I was using it for work quite a lot at one point, and it was good for very wearable looks. So again, I can see where there is an audience for it. When I compare it to all of the other palettes that we've gone through today, because we've now gone through all of them, this is the last one, it's not that interesting really, is it? It feels like it should be, because we do have some color in this one, but I wouldn't really recommend Pixie eyeshadows. I just think there is a lot better out there. All right guys, so that wraps up my 2021 eyeshadow palette collection. I really hope you enjoyed this one. I am amazed that we haven't ended up with more eyeshadow palettes. I did think I would be on a higher total. I think we can blame that on my filming schedule in the second half of this year, that I just haven't been filming as much, and my bank account is probably quite thankful for that. On that note, I'm gonna leave you guys. I am really hoping I'm gonna manage to edit this one before the new year so that it can actually go up in time, but who knows at this point. If it does, then I wish you all a very happy new year, and I can't wait to see you on the other side in 2022. If you enjoyed this video, then do as always, please make sure you give it a big thumbs up. Leave me a comment and letting me know what you thought of it. And if you haven't already, then do make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos. And I'll see you all on the next one. Bye guys!